This episode features Maryland waterman CJ Canby. He is the captain of the fishing vessel Miss Paula. Guy has been in the business of blue crabbing for 23 years. He has stories to tell. He has knowledge to share. We're going to talk about him getting into social media, what it's been like, how he balances that and crabbing, and talk about how he prepares himself during the off season to make sure he can provide for his family during that tight fishing season. All around, just an amazing guy. I know you're going to like this one. Man, do you hear that? Look at here. They're coming. They're coming. We're going to have a party. I'm talking good on barbecue. Hey guys, welcome to this edition of the Old Boy Podcast. I am excited to have CJ Canby from the fishing vessel Miss Paula joining us. You may remember from our discussion with Luke McFadden when we were asking him what kind of old boys and old girls he'd recommend to come on the podcast. First one he answered with was CJ. So that's why you're here, CJ. Thank you so much for joining us, bud.
I hope I was the first one. I better be.
We'll go check the tape. Yep, you were. You're the first. All right. But what I've been enjoying about this, talk to Luke and then now talking with you is, I've always been a fan of the Maryland blue crab. Absolutely delicious, but something that I didn't know much about as far as harvesting and regulation and all the things that go into you guys providing, harvesting those tasty creatures for us. But first off, I wanted to kind of step back and where did you get your start in crabbing? Was it a family thing? Did you grow up on it? How did you get introduced to making your living there in the Chesapeake?
Yeah, so first and foremost, Maryland crabs are the best crabs on earth. So, it's not surprising you'd love blue crabs, and hopefully you've had some Maryland crabs. So I got started this will be my 23rd season. I actually went to college, got a bachelor's degree, was going to be a scientist. I did trout line, which is using lines with like chicken necks and baits on them. Then you have to net the crabs off. It's different than the way we fish now with pots. But I got started, instead of working at Snowball Stand or McDonald's or something, I got started crabbing and made my money summers doing that. Went to college, got a degree. And then after 3 years, I kind of looked around and didn't like where I was at. And a buddy of mine, Jason, he was kind of my mentor. Him and I got to be buddies. We were out in the early days crabbing and looked at what he was doing and thought I'd give it a try. And it's been good ever since. And now getting into social media, adding on to that too. And so that's kind of where I got my start.
No, that's great. Talk to me a little bit about that change from running lines to pots. Was it just an efficiency thing, an economics thing? What kind of drove that change? Because I know in some of those older industries, change is like the devil. So there had to be some real financial benefits or maybe regulation. I don't know.
Yeah, so it's just a lot more economical to use trout lines. You're not typically going to catch as many crabs. You don't, the pots sit for days. And you have a much more consistent catch. With the trout line, you take your line to a certain area, set the line, whatever you catch that day is what you catch. And, you got, a few $100 and the lines and buoys and anchors, stuff like that, and a net. And it's a lot cheaper. We have tens of hundreds of thousands of dollars invested in boats and pots and all that goes into fishing pots. So it's just a lot cheaper way to do it. So for a young kid that wanted to make a few dollars, it was a cheap and easy way to do it, and certainly it was not easy, but less a cost.
Yep, the barrier of entry is much lower.
That's right. Well put.
Yes. One of the things that's interesting to me and what, and kind of looking through, which by the way, I know you said you're getting started in the social media. I went through your Instagram account and I really, really like it. I like the instruction base of it, but then also you're a pretty funny guy too. So I love those kind of accounts where you see some of the personality, but you also gain knowledge. So I think that's pretty awesome. You've talked a lot about the salinity of the water and the impact that has on the harvest and some of those things. Like, educate me and the listeners on water quality, salinity, and the impact that has on the product and the harvest.
Yeah, well, thanks for the kind words. I don't have the youngness and the boyish charm of Luke, so I got to be more on the education end and try to be funny, I guess. Use my strengths if I have any.
Y'all are fun playing off of each other on the YouTube and Instagram. I do like that.
Yeah, we have we got the father son relationship. So it's more like redheaded stepfather relationship. I like what. Yeah, so salinity plays a big role with the crabs. They want some salinity. I couldn't tell you what it is, but the bulk of the crabs end up at a certain area in the bay every year. So depending on what salinity they want, where that line is where the bulk of them end up. And years like this where we start really super fresh, we've had other years similar, and the crabs tend not to come up in big numbers all the way up to like the Bay Bridge area and above into the upper bay. So we'll always have some, but it's trying to, think ahead to, hey, the salinity's low now. It could quit raining, and salinity could jump, and they could run further north. So, but salinity plays a huge role, and a lot of it has to do with where the female crabs end up. So the immature females is what the big males are looking for to breed with, and it's where those females end up is where the big males want to be. And typically, it's in a little bit of salt, a little bit of fresh kind of mix. So that's really where they want to be.
So when it comes to the beginning of the season, do you kind of guess based off of that? Do you run numbers that you've ran in the past and had good yield out of? Like, what's that initial mode of attack? Day 1, 2, 3 of the fishing season.
Yeah, so we pretty much set the same areas every year. It's just more of looking at what you're catching, maybe adjusting depth. So maybe fish a little deeper, a little shallower, chasing peelers, which are the crabs that are getting ready to shed. They're the most valuable crab for me. So explain
that to me. So, what makes them the most valuable?
So we catch peelers, which are crabs that are within a few days of shedding their shells. And then I bring them home, put them in my tanks, and then shed them out. So the soft crab for me is the most valuable crab per crab. It's the most labor intensive because I have to babysit them.
Sure.
You can't really ever leave. You got to check the tanks 3 times a day because it's about 6 to 8 hours. They start to firm up and get hard to where people don't want to eat them. And then they're also not worth anything to sell because they're not hard enough to sell as a hard crab. So it's basically a loss. So you got a lot of maintenance with that. My wife helps me tremendously with that. She checks them during the day or helps me in the morning. She's been, a huge asset to the soft crab operation. And like I always call her the soft crab queen. So it was a huge asset there. And so, we may try to chase more peelers or chase you set a little deeper maybe for them on the mud and try to chase them a little bit to catch them if that's all that's around. And just try to rub nickels together until the bulk of the crabs show up. Typically, a year like this, we'll have about 3 weeks to make the bulk of our money. So,
wow, 3 weeks! Holy shit, that's a lot of pressure.
It's a lot of pressure. You better make sure everything's working and running, and up, and catch them while they're there. So,
I mean, you think about that. That's 10 and a half, 11 months of preparation for really one big make it or break it month. That's putting them balls on the line, old boy.
Welcome to crabbing.
Yeah, no kidding. I'm over here nervous as hell. I ain't got a boat. I ain't got a pot. I ain't got nothing. I'm just like, damn, man, that is that's the Wild West right there.
Yeah.
And then the interesting thing there too is like so many things are out of your guys' control. Obviously weather and that nature, but like talk a little bit about regulation. How is the fishery managed? How's it managed well? What could be better? What's some of the challenges that you face as a boat owner, and someone that makes their living out in the Chesapeake?
Yeah, so Maryland crab is probably, our blue crabs are probably one of the most managed species, and in my opinion, kind of overmanaged. We only have so much data, and then the records from watermen get turned in to kind of base off of. They do a winter dredge survey, so they have an idea how many crabs lived over the winter, how many crabs are small going to enter the fishery, how many crabs are already in the fishery, how many females, how many males, all that kind of stuff. So our females have kind of always been, at least most of my career, have always been managed by bushel limits. So how many we can catch per day. They keep track of all that through the harvest reports, what we send in. And then just recently they added the male bushel limits, which I'm not a fan of. I don't think we need really to manage the males, because the females are the ones that reproduce. Some of their logic is that if there's not enough males to breed with the females, then they don't produce enough eggs. So we have size limits on the males. We have time limits. We have bushel limits. We have area where we can crab, where we can't crab, how many pots we can fish. Everything that it has to do with the crab on the boat, everything is managed.
So when you said time, so there's a max amount of time you can soak your pots?
No, the pots can stay in the water, all season long, but we can only check them for 8 hours. So 7.5 hours before sunrise to 8 hours, or a half hour before sunrise to 8 hours after that. So we have an 8-hour workday basically.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. And I guess that just keeps you from turning and burning all day and night, I guess.
Yeah, and it also keeps guys out of the fishery who go work a job and then get home 4 o'clock in the afternoon, go fish some pots, or it keeps a certain demographic of people out of the, or not demographics the right word, but certain group of people out of the fishery. So if you're fishing pots, you got to be able to do it, during that time period. Trout line, they're allowed 10-hour workday. So they can fish a little bit longer. You can fish both tides typically in a day. So if you really want to be out there that long, you can, put in a 10-hour day and get a little bit longer to harvest. So that's kind of how the time limits work.
That's interesting. Thank you for sharing that. I've always, that's always the things that aren't cool to talk about at dinner parties, but can have such an impact on profitability and making it from one season to another. You know what I mean? And obviously you start to operate within those limits because, it's just, what you have to do. But still, man, it's another set of variables that you've got to plan and work around.
Yeah, absolutely. And the big issue with the male bushel limits is they got us, the limits are in August and September. The female limits are all year or all season long, but the males are in August and September. Some of the best money months are, May, June, July, and August during the summer, until Labor Day.
Tourist season.
So, summertime activity in Maryland. And, guys are losing money during that time. And then, any crabs left over, you still have October, November to catch them. A lot of those crabs are caught later in the season when they're worth less, and they're still being caught. So it kind of, it's not, I don't believe, doing what it really should be doing. And it benefits certain user groups and things like that. So it doesn't really affect me. I have 2 licenses, so I can catch 2 limits. So, and I also have the biggest limits. We're allowed 900 pots per license. So I have, a lot. There's not many days that I have to stop fishing, or, I can catch full limits and still, and it doesn't affect me, but it certainly hampers a lot of other guys, and especially the smaller guys.
If I remember right, that means you fish more pots than Luke. I think he was 1,500 and you're 1,800?
Nah, he fishes about 1,000 and I'll fish 1,500. Yeah. So I fish a few more. So he's able to fish less because he sells his own crabs at retail prices, whereas I sell to a carry out that then sells to retail. So that's kind of how it's worked for me. I have a family. I have 3 kids, wife and 3 kids, and young kids. I have 13, 11, and 9. So, I've tried to catch more and sell them for less and hopefully make the same money, just to be more available with my family and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, I got to think that selling your own, that's a whole other job on top of going out and fishing them. You know what I mean? Yep. Like, I could see where that, and so you just kind of show up there. Is there a certain wholesaler you deal with all the time and, just deliver and do your thing through them?
Yeah. So it's a father and son that own a carry out. It's Angel's Seafood in Overley, Maryland is who I sell, the vast majority of my crabs to. Those guys, we work out a price, which is not typical. Most crabs wholesalers or crab buyers, they tell you the price. Him and I work out a price that's fair for both of us. And also a lot of times they come pick them up. They'll come meet us at the boat, or they'll come pick them up that night and then have them for the next day to sell. So my crabs are some of the freshest you can absolutely get anywhere on earth. They're going right to the store, and they're being sold, pretty much daily. And they turn a lot of crabs over, and, you're getting, his customers are so picky that they can tell the difference between my crabs and out-of-state crabs, or even lower bay Virginia crabs.
No
Yeah,
kidding.
it's pretty impressive. And, like I said, they're the best crabs on earth. So you're not settling for anything less.
They think your crabs are sexy, old
Yeah,
boy.
right.
They can tell them out. I love that. That's well, and that's got to feel good too, right? You know what I mean? That tells you you're fishing right. You're bringing out the best product. You're taking care of it. You're getting in the right hands. That's prideful.
Yeah, absolutely. And, a lot of it is the freshness. A lot of it is just how they're handled. And then, but I mean, it's just Chesapeake Bay. Chesapeake Bay is a special, special place. It produces a crab like no other. It's an amazing resource. Sadly, it has not been managed and taken care of the way it should be. And that, that's a lot of what I also try to bring to light, on social media is just how our bay is not, being taken care of, and how it could easily be fixed, So that's
Well, talk me through that. Well, what is wrong and how do you fix it?
so the biggest issue is like every other body of water on Earth. It's water quality. So we have in the Upper Bay, we have 5 sewage treatment plants, and those sewage treatment plants are dumping up to 100 million gallons of wastewater per day. And depending on the day and how much other inflows they have from rain and storm water, then you have less nitrogen phosphorus treatment. So then you're basically the water always coming in is clean. It's chlorinated and the solids are removed. So it's not sewage. It's just full of nitrogen and phosphorus at times. That nitrogen and phosphorus goes into the water. It's basically like a hydroponic system. It's a steady trickle, a steady dump of nutrients. The algae that's already there and available and alive in the water, it explodes. It creates these huge algae blooms. When those algae blooms die, not only do they cloud the water, which keeps underwater grasses from growing, things like that, and affects where certain crabs and fish can live, but some of them do have toxic qualities. But when the algae dies, then the bacteria that eats that also consumes oxygen. So then you have these big dead zones that are created. And last year we had over a month of, any pots in 15-footer water or deeper in areas, all the crabs, all the fish, everything was dead.
Damn.
And it was over a month of that. And, we're screaming and yelling about it. And it just goes into the abyss of, oh, it's this, oh, it's that. And they blame everything else. They blame the watermen. They blame the farmers. They blame all of it is everything else. But what the true problem is, and that's these sewage treatment plants. And they've all been upgraded. We spent hundreds of millions of dollars of taxpayer money to upgrade these sewage treatment plants to reduce the nitrogen and phosphorus. And because of mismanagement and not running the plants the way they should be, and a bunch of them are run through Baltimore City, and the management there has not done a good job of keeping up with the plants. I mean, these are, it's basically a living organism that is what is reducing the nitrogen and phosphorus. So you have, if you're not taking care of that living organism, it's not doing its job.
Sure. And that's got to be just frustrating. So it's got to feel like just continually beating your head against the wall, right? Like
it is.
Well, especially when you see taxpayer money go towards trying to fix the problem with the right infrastructure, but then not operating said infrastructure in the most efficient manner, which, and it's just such a shame too, because it is such a, just a beautiful body of water, number one, and something you want multiple generations to be able to keep enjoying as you have yourself,
Yeah, absolutely. And, most problems, it's the money. They don't have the money to fix it. And in this, it's just truly mismanagement. If they would allow like an organization to come in and take it over, or, some of the sewage treatment plants we have, like on the Potomac, they're run by like a group, WSSC, and that is not political. It's trying to do the best job it can, as opposed to taking money out of moving money around, not paying bills, not taking care of things. And man, when you talk to the people that work inside these plants, it's sad what's going on and how much their hands are tied because of mismanagement. So,
golly, that's crazy. Well, hopefully something comes around and you guys can have some positive change there, because I know the fishery deserves it, and the people that are making their living off of it definitely do too. So that's really interesting. And once again, like, I think that's another thing that people don't think about when you take that leap to start your own business, and especially to make your living off the land or off of natural resources. There's just so many things outside of your control that you have to take into consideration, or it can bomb you.
Yeah, absolutely. And the crazy part is, like, last year, because of those dead zones, it actually helped me. I had a whole month of really, really good crabbing that I wasn't expecting, because the crabs that were in deeper water where they wanted to be all got pushed shallow where my crab pots were, and we caught crabs a whole extra month where normally it would have fallen off. So, I mean, that's part of it too. We're taking advantage of, we're as watermen, we're finding ways to make the regulations work for us, make the bad conditions work for us. And, that's, kind of what separates, the guys that are continuing from the guys that are having to quit. So.
Proud sponsor of the show, Trollco Clothing. Love what the brand's about. It's all about supporting that blue-collar worker. You know them for their trademark shirt and hat, dirty hands, clean money. It's not just a slogan. It is a lifestyle. Go visit trollcoclothing.com and use my discount code OldBoyPodcast for 15% off. Yeah, and that was one thing I was going to ask too. Have you seen a contraction in the amount of commercial boats out there in the fishery?
It's changed. So I would say there's a similar amount in a lot of places, but it's gone from guys who are full-time to guys that are more like weekend kind of guys, or, do it for a couple months and then go back to teaching school or driving a truck or something like that. They're not full-time. And those guys are kind of, smaller operations, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, in some respects are kind of in the way, and the bigger guys, there's it's mostly an older demographic. So like Luke will probably see a huge drop off here in the next 10 years. There's 20, 30 guys that are in their late 50s, early 60s that are still crabbing, and they're going to crab until they die. It's all they know. But, he'll be the one to see the big drop off that's coming, because there's just no young people in this industry. Just like most commercial fishing, they have not incentivized young people to get into it, and, have really, it's all fisheries in the entire, United States.
No, and that's interesting. Do you think it's just this generation's pretty soft and it's hard ass work, or what do you, or it's just, you've got some, people, some fathers that have done it, just said, there's no way in hell I'm going to let my kid do this. Like, where do you think that comes from, that you're going to lose that many watermen in that time period?
Yeah, I mean, that's part of it, there's an entire, I'm sure, there's an entire generation, a young generation that are hard workers, that are motivated, that are driven. These guys are going out and doing the dang thing and not getting the credit they deserve. But you also have just the cost of all this. And with over-regulation, you can't go out and make the money that you need to in order to stay in business. And somebody starting even in the crabbing industry now with pots, the first pots I bought were $13. They're now $36. They've tripled, I guess, or almost tripled, in 23 seasons. And the boats now have gone up tens of thousands of dollars. Everything on a motor now is $1,000 or more. There's just the cost of just maintaining, and if you're trying to feed a family and pay your mortgage and your truck payment and a boat payment, and there's just not the juice ain't worth the squeeze when you can go and get a job at the port, or go do something else and make the same or better money, and may not do what you like or love, but
the and you mentioned boats. You've got the Miss Paula. What is it about that boat and that design that you like using it for what you do?
Yeah, so that famous Paula is a 40-foot Kinnaman, 40 by 12. I got a 315 5.9 Cummins in it. It'll cruise, almost 20 mile an hour if I really want to run her up. And a nice flat deck on it that is great for working crab pots. It's also a dead rise, which in Chesapeake Bay we have chop. We don't have swells, so the dead rise cuts through that chop nice. And my boat's glass on plywood, so it's really light, economical. Burns, most I'll burn is 10 or 12 gallons of fuel a day. very economical, and it's just a great platform to fish crab pots off of. It's really what it was designed for. The roof keeps the sun off of us, but also can hold 150 crab pots on it, and it's just an ideal working space. I'm was throwing around the idea of trying to reinvent the wheel there. We were looking at aluminum type boats and going to skiff type setups and maybe doing something similar to what they have in Louisiana. It would allow me to save. I got slip rent that I have, and then winter storage and some other costs. I could probably save $6,000 or $8,000 a year by switching boats because I live on the water. I could keep it here when I can't keep the Miss Paula here. So at my house. So, there might be some chances there to change things up and come up with a boat that's more economical because, these boats now, the motors are, $30,000, $40,000, rebuilt motor. And then you got 10 grand in a transmission. And it's just, the money is just astronomical. It's just, everything has gone up so much.
Well, and how much of that stuff do you try, once again, because of the economics of it, and being in this 23 years, how many skills would you say you've acquired in just trying to handle as much of the maintenance you can yourself of your vessels, all the property you need to do this?
Yeah. So, in a lot of ways, I do as much as I can. Some of the, every few years, 4 or 5 years, I try to have the motor going over, just preventive maintenance hoses and have the new injectors and all that kind of stuff, heat exchanger cleaned and after cooler and just all that preventative maintenance type stuff I have somebody else do. But oil changes and any kind of odds and ends, fixes, changing zincs, anything on the smaller end, I do all that myself. And just keeping tabs on how things are going, all the hydraulics on the boat, I do all that, fix all that myself. And I guess I'm fairly handy in the sense, but your viewers are they put me to shame. I'm not I can fix things, but it's just I'm not. It's not what my skill is. My skill is catching crabs, so I try to wing it the best I can, and then it's also finding ways to save money. If I can save, it's a 120-day season roughly. If I can save $10 a day, it's $1,200. If I can save $100 a day, it's $12,000 for me, and that's really what I live and die on is that $100 a day.
Yep. Well, and that's the thing too. And when you own a business, looking at it that granular of a level, and what that little bit of savings does when it multiplies, I think that's great advice. One of the things I ran across and kind of researching the discussion with Luke and with you is and it was kind of one of those, once I heard about it and heard you explain it, I'm like, well, no shit. But zinking the crab pots, talk a little bit about that, because it makes total. I was like, what the hell are they doing with this? And then once you explained it, I was like, oh, it makes so much sense.
Yeah. So where we are in the bay, the best catching traps are made out of galvanized wire. A lot of fisheries, Louisiana, pretty much all other fisheries use vinyl coated pots, so they don't have to zinc theirs. Those pots will last, depending on how salty the water is. You can get 8 or 10 seasons out of them. You don't have to put zincs in them or anything like that because they're coated with that vinyl coating. So what we do is paint them every year using latex paint. And then we also put a sacrificial anode. I've actually switched over to aluminum. So for me, especially these fresher years, the aluminum works a lot better. The aluminum anodes use a better wire. They burn completely to nothing. Just a better product, in my opinion. Plus, it's a local guy, and I like supporting him. And I don't know totally the cost now, but it used to save me a couple $100 a year too doing that, and just a better product on top of it, and also help keep the pots from burning up, because you can put a crab pot over 1 year without anodes, and by the next year it's gone. Whereas in the old days when the wire was good, I had pots that are 15 seasons old still, so. They don't last that long anymore. There's not as much zinc, or it's that Chinese wire or whatever. It just does not last. You're lucky to get 6 to 8 seasons now out of wire. So,
damn. So you're turning that. So at $30-something a pop, you're turning that over every 6-8 years. That's
yep.
Obviously they're at different ages and this and that, but that's still a chunk to go fishing. Every year, every 2 years.
Yeah, our overhead is astronomical. In a business sense, no one else on earth would ever get into a business where the overhead is this high. and the profit is this low. It's for the love of doing it in so many ways. I always say there's, way more ways, way more better and easier, ways to make a living than crabbing, but I love crabbing, so I'm just going to keep doing it.
Well, speaking of that, is any of your kids show any interest in it?
So far, not really. My oldest, who'll come on the boat and help. He started out on the spreading pixie dust for the tilt-a-whirl last year. baiting shrimp heads into crab pots, and next year hopefully he'll be pushing pots and maybe dipping or whatever. So, but he's not money driven yet. So we'll see as he gets older. Money driven. I don't know. I wouldn't say none of them would get into it. I'd almost push them more into social media. My oldest especially. He's a good looking kid, and he loves the outdoors, loves catching snakes and turtles and all kind of stuff. And people have noticed him from my videos over me. So he's got that look like Luke. You know what I mean? So, but he'll tell me he don't want to do that either. So I keep telling him you got to figure something out.
He's 13 though. I remember in that age, like you just wanted to freaking be a kid and F off, and hopefully here over the next couple of years he'll find what drives him and what he's passionate about and start chasing it.
Yeah, for sure.
Speaking of Luke, how does that character show up in your life?
Yeah, so him and I met, man, I think it's been about, I want to say 20 years ago. He was at my wedding. I've been married 16 years, and I met him a few years before that. His parents went to my church, and he was wanting to fish and hunt and do whatever he could do outside, and his parents had no interest in it or no idea. It was this kid who was just an anomaly in their family, and they came across me, and I've had a lot of mentors in my life, guys that took time out for me, and so I took them under my wing, I like to say, and tried to steer him straight and give him opportunities that not every kid gets to get at his age, and he just loved it, and I saw that, and so was able to pour into him. And then when he graduated high school, he worked with me for a year, and I could see his potential, and I think he wanted to stay working with me or maybe take over my boat, but to me I wasn't at the stage yet to give it up, and I knew he could do it himself, so I kicked him out of the nest, and he's flown high ever since.
And that's interesting, and that's one of the things too, where when you're in an industry, and you said it best, people had invest and poured into you, and and there you are, you see this kid that he has a passion for it, he's going to work his ass off, and you pour into him, and now I'm sure he'll find somebody to do the same, and both of y'all are doing the same kind of through social media too, like, and the way his account's grown's been crazy, you know what I mean? Like, but that always paying it forward, like that's the only thing that'll grow and save an industry that's having issues, is just getting more people interested, even if they don't decide that that's the route they're going to go, they're at least an advocate for what you're doing. Someone else that knows what's going on, another voice. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And, and that's what has not been passed on, and getting back to where young people are getting into it. A lot of fathers didn't push their kids to get into it or didn't have interest. And then you also had guys who just wouldn't tell anybody anything. There's a lot of these guys are very secretive. They're very, a lot of them are not happy with Luke and I to, spread these, secrets, I guess, out to the public. And, to me, if we don't get our word out, get our message out now, our industry is going to die. I mean, people are always going to want crabs. And if we're not telling them how we're struggling and how it's hard to do this, and then also why these crabs are so expensive, it's just going to go away. And, you're going to have fisheries, Louisiana or Texas or Carolinas. They're going to fill in our niche that we have here and just take over, and it will be gone. So we gotta pass it on, and it's all commercial fishing.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and I think it's and I feel like too, like that, like you said, that explanation of why they cost what they do, this and that, so that people understand what you're going through, what you end up burning up cost wise just to capture them, and then it just helps make a more educated customer, and I feel like anytime you can educate the customer, it's going to be a better experience because they're going to know more. They're going to appreciate more what they're having. And, I just think it's such an old set way of thinking that to not want to share that information. You know what I mean? Like there's the more you share it, the more it's going to help, not just holding it close to the vest and saying shit needs to stay like it's been for the last, 30 years.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's showing fruit now. I mean, most of the guys, like I said, are, at least older than me in their 50s, some in their 60s. And, it hasn't been passed on at all. And, and same thing with the customer, or the consumer, you really got to spend a couple more dollars to get the best quality you're going to get. And you always get what you pay for. If you're going to pay, $6 a pound for these Indian and Vietnam shrimp, that are raised in horrid conditions, sewage treatment plant overflows and chicken farms, and just absolutely nothing that would ever pass the United States standards. The wild caught's $8-9 a pound. You're going to be better off. Yeah. Same thing with the farm raised salmon. You're always better to look for that dark red meat. You're going to get a better quality product. You're going to get, you're going to support fishermen. You're supporting your neighbors, or you're supporting people around you. You're supporting Americans. And we've lost so much of supporting our own people just to save a few bucks with Chinese knockoffs and just and especially in seafood. 99% of seafood is all foreign.
Yes.
We've put an entire industry out of business because everybody wanted a fish stick, or they wanted to save, $2,
Yeah. No, it's a very good point. I think back, me being here in Florida, it's very similar to what we saw in the citrus industry. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I mean, Florida owned the citrus industry forever. And then, had some, kind of that perfect storm come along. You had, canker come in, which was, just killing trees left and right. You had developers want to develop the state. Well, then Brazil looks around and goes, oh, shit, this seems like an opening. You know what I mean? Brazil starts realizing we've got a great climate for oranges. Let's start blowing these, let's start putting in groves. And so kind of survive canker, kind of survive some of the development. But, Brazil's starting to take some of the business. And then, boom, you have greening right behind it. And then once greening happened, then it just opened the door for Brazil to take as much of the business as they wanted.
Yeah, and it's all lost. It's all, it more than likely isn't going to come back. And, if it does, it's just going to be a small fraction of what it was. I mean, huge industries that support lots and lots of people and pour money back in and tax money and create infrastructure and job. I mean, it's sad to see it all go.
Yeah, and very similar, another Florida one is Steenhatchee with the oysters up there. Yep. That's one that you talk about some real mismanagement. I mean, they've had to shut that fishery down for 5 years. You had somewhere around between 45 and 50 independent oyster houses, wholesalers. I think when they closed the fishery, there was 3 or 4. I mean, Texas has taken a ton of the business, like so many areas that, and people just always assumed like, oh, Steenhatchee oysters, they'll never go anywhere. Like they'll always be available. Wrong. You know what I mean? Like if you don't take care of that stuff, it will get taken away from you. You know what I mean? It's that simple.
Yeah, is that mismanagement there too with freshwater inflows?
Yeah,
and Apalachicola.
Well, and Apalachicola, Steenhatchee, and they just let people overfish the shit out of it. You know what I mean? So water quality and just over harvest.
Gotcha. Yeah, wow. Definitely a shame to see these things go away, and like you said, things we never thought would go away. And a lot of people think Maryland crabs are going to be here forever, and I mean, there's just not going to be the guys to catch. When we get these regulations to a point where you can't make any money because of the costs, then we're done. We're out of business, and that's it. There's no more Maryland crabs.
Yeah, and that's really a shame, and it's something that it's something that could happen in our lifetime.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? It's not far fetched.
Yeah, for sure.
One of the questions I wanted to ask you, being one of the watermen and being there in the Chesapeake, how's the whole Key Bridge thing going? As far as, obviously if you've been living under a rock, if you haven't heard about the collapse, but since then, what's, how have things, I don't know if it impacted you guys at all being, what you're doing, or, just generally, how's it impacted the water out there?
Yeah, so I think overall it hasn't done a whole lot. One possible negative, for us is that I'm starting to get messages. Hey, is the water safe? We heard all this, lithium batteries fell in the water, or they're stirring up all this sediment, or and people think that affects like the whole bay or something, and it's one little river. I mean, it's a big river, but it's one river on the Chesapeake Bay, and even where I am at the mouth, we're not going to see any issues with that. And to me, it's been an opportunity just to bring the light. Hey, right there where that bridge is, on the other side, there's 2 sewage treatment plants. And one of them's dumping 100 million gallons every single day that flows right past there. That's much more of the issue than a few lithium batteries and some stirred up sediment, and it's just, people just, they just don't understand how it all flows and goes together. And it's going to be, the guys that have really been hurt bad are the port. I think some of them have gotten paid because of through funds and things like that. So I think some of them are still, making a paycheck or whatever. But that, the channel is still shut down to the largest draft vessels. I think it's open to either 35 or 40 feet of water now. So a few vessels have been able to leave and get out, and there's still more, I guess, trapped in behind there. But it's going to be a very lengthy process to get all the bridge off the galley and then all of it up off the bottom, so that then they can look to rebuild, which they're saying, 2028. So you might as well figure 2030, so.
Wow. It's going to be a while.
It's going to be a while. And, it'll be interesting just to see how everything goes with that. And, if they are able to get it done quicker or not, or, so it'll be interesting.
All right, guys, proud sponsor of the show, 5-9 Whiskey. You will see me enjoying this from time to time during the podcast. It is delicious, smooth. I've shared it with a ton of friends, and all they want to know is, where can I get it? Built for the tradesman that's put in that long day's work, and when it's over, they want to sit down with a nice whiskey, enjoy those wins from the day, and get ready for the next one. Where can you get it? 5-9 Whiskey. That's spelled out, 59whiskey.com. Don't forget about the promo code, enter Old Boy Podcast for 15% off. To me, I mean, that was just for that to go down where it did, and the amount of traffic and all of that stuff, but it's good to hear that the effects aren't really pushing to you guys, which I think is phenomenal.
Yeah. And it'll add, occasionally it'll add some commute time if I have to go over that side, but it's not very often for me. It's affect a lot of other commuters, guys. It's added anywhere from 15 minutes to a half hour to their commute every day. And, the tunnel goes the same route really, but it's a little further north. The problem with the tunnel is if there's an accident, it shuts the whole thing down. So you can really be in bad shape, if you got any issues. So
that could turn into one hell of a commute.
Yes, that's going to push it behind. So, but overall, the guys I buy crabs from, they can come down through the tunnel, and it doesn't affect them. They're further west, so they'll just do that, and so it shouldn't affect us too much. Besides the view is completely changed, totally different.
Oh, sure. The one question I've always been curious of is what's the average life cycle of a crab? Like when you guys harvest it, what's usually the age of that crab?
Well, the female crab releases her eggs. The crabs hatch. They go through, I think it's like 10 or 12 different stages before they get to be kind of that small little, actually still looks like a crab. It's another year for that crab to get to where I think it's marketable size. So I think they're at least 2 years old by the time they're marketable size or close to it. And then, the crab can live another 3 or 4 years, I guess, depending on where they are and, different areas, things like that. So it's a pretty low turnover. I think they estimate like the lifespan at about 3 years is how they base the regulations, things like that, off of is a 3-year-old crab.
Yeah, I've always been curious of that, and thank you for answering that for me. Cleared my curiosity there.
Yeah, and the interesting part is the females want that fresher water to mate, but then they got to go all the way down over 19 parts of salt, which is in the lower part of the bay, to release their eggs. The eggs won't live in fresh water; they die, so they have to be released. They not only have to be in salty water, but they also have to be released in very salty water. And a lot of the plankton, all that actually goes out into the ocean. Nobody really understands the whole life cycle of it, or how how
Sure.
like little tiny baby crabs make it back into the bay after they've gone out to the ocean, and how much of our crabs are actually the larvae from further north or south, or nobody knows how it all works, but it's really an interesting process.
What do you have one of those times that you've been out fishing and they're just like this oh shit moment, whether you're taking on water, anything of that nature, where you're like, all right, I just want to get the fuck back in?
I have towed Luke in like 3 or 4 times. I think I got a picture every time I towed him in, but I have not, so far haven't had to get towed in. We've broken hydraulic hoses. We've, had all kind of different stuff happen. Run out of fuel, or the fuel with too many pots on one side, and the pickup, sucked air, and shift weight over to get the fuel and to the other side. And, there's all different, stupid little problems, but I've been fortunate. I've had bilge pumps, break, while we're out there, you get some water in the boat, stuff like that. But I have 2 bilge pumps, and, try to always, have redundancy systems and all that. And we're not very far, my farthest run is about 12 miles. So, we're not that far from port, and a lot of days we're within a couple miles. So it's really not that far. And then when we are crabbing, a lot of times we're within a few hundred yards of shore. In the summer, especially, we're crabbing shallower water. So, I had more, when I used to take duck hunting parties, I had more harrowing experiences, breaking ice, and, the wind would come up, you'd making ice all over the boat, and just, being out there in the fog and all that kind of stuff, and, just to go shoot a couple ducks, but not as many harrowing experiences, unfortunately. So.
That's funny. What switching gears here a little bit and talking about the social media aspect of things, what's been some of the challenges for you with that, is kind of just picking that up and running with it?
Yeah. So the biggest part for me is I don't have the boyish charm, and I ain't good looking. So I don't have the white shiny teeth. I don't know. It hasn't been as lucrative, or haven't grown as quickly as Luke. So, obviously my demographic is going to be a little bit older and different mentality. I guess I'm a little more dry, maybe, or more. My videos tend to be shorter. I'm doing a lot, at least the short form content. I'm doing all that myself, and I'm not a very gifted editor, or it's more fun for me, I guess. And that's kind of the way lately, especially. I had hoped to make some money with it and help to offset my my crabbing like Luke is, or to get into some kind of brand deals or something where I could just help cushion, because crabs are all I have. I got all my eggs in the crab basket. So, and if I don't have a good season, we're living on love that year, that winter. So, it would be nice to get to where social media was helping pay the bills a little bit, but right now it's mostly fun. I enjoy it, and try to educate people. That's certainly my main goal. I've always done that, and show some of the cool stuff we do, and just invite people into our alien world. That's really my main objective with it, I guess. So.
I love that about it, and it's just an extension of yourself, and being able to share, what you do, and all that. I mean, it'd be a shame not to share that 23 years of experience with as many people as you can. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I have a unique perspective too, because I was a scientist, so I cross a lot of of user groups and people. I work with a lot of scientists, guys that want to collect crabs or have information. I've worked with a lady last year talking about different buoys to help with loss, and and even there was just like, hey, if you just colored the float free zones a different color, made them like purple or pink or whatever, so people would know, hey, that's where I want to drive to, and just simple things like that. All the float free buoys are the same color as the crab buoys and the clam buoys, and the don't go through here buoys. You know what I mean? So it's just some simple fixes that, like, you get into politics and government, they just I don't know. It seems simple to me.
Hey, we may not be the sharpest knives in the drawer, but if you tell us what orange means, if you tell us what green means, and you tell us what yellow means, we can follow direction. All right.
We can all follow direction. Yeah. So it's, so, and it's neat to work with those people and to see their perspective, and also to educate them too. And, it's kind of a leap for me, because a lot of those people are not necessarily, they don't have my best interests in mind. Not that they're trying to hurt me, but they don't necessarily they're not looking to help me necessarily. They're looking for answers or facts or whatever. And, I've had to kind of, take a little risk with dealing with them. But, some of the relationships and stuff, last year I had some people from Portugal out. They came over, they want to start a blue crab fishery over there. I figure they're not going to get Portuguese crabs all the way to here. They want to eat them themselves. So teaching people out there, teaching them what the pots look like, how to catch them, all that kind of stuff. And hey, maybe I'll get a trip to Portugal 1 year out of it, So,
and that would be just kind of cool, like an exclamation point on your career to like help start a fishery in another country. Like that's rad as shit, man. That's like life work stuff.
Yeah. And that would be cool to me. My big innovation to the industry is using hot water to clean the pots. That I will take credit for, because I was the first doing it. And I always said somebody's going to figure out a better system to do it, to create hot water. I was using like a power washer, hot, I forget what they call them, hot box or something system, and just running water in and running out and whatever. And then Crosby Manufacturing up in Maine, they make the lobster pot, the lobster dipping ones. So, I took another idea. They do it a lot for lobster pots, but nobody was doing it on the bay. We were using either anti-fouling paint, which went away, thankfully, and then also bleach and power washing and, so the hot water. And a lot of people got mad at me for telling other people about that, or, showing it in videos. And I tried to hide it for a couple of years, but because my competition wasn't using it, so it was helping me tremendously. But at the end of the day, I started it. So if I'm gonna hurt myself and drop the cat out of the bag, it's mine to do. And
it's your call.
I can. That's my one innovation to the industry, I guess. And so.
That's awesome. 23 years into it, you gotta talk to me about how you like to cook these crabs. I know you gotta have a damn good recipe.
It's really, it's a good recipes. I got good recipes, but they're just so simple, and we only steam crabs in Maryland. There is no boiled crabs. There's no garlic crabs. There's no, any other way, at least whole crabs, live crabs, to deal with them. We steam our crabs with J.O. Spice. It's a local spice company, small family operated company. Man, they're, just salt of the earth people. Their recipes as old as the other company that everybody knows, and, is owned by a conglomerate that's got to keep up with their, their stockholders and all that.
Oh yeah.
I'm always going to support J.O. Spice and recommend people, use it. It's just a better product, creates the best possible steamed crab you can eat. So, steamed crabs with J.O. and I'll take a pound of crab meat. I'll mix in their crab cake breader. It's literally like it's like almost a pinch, a little more than a pinch, probably a tablespoon of their, breadcrumb kind of stuff, seasoning, whatever. Mix that in, and I think you put an egg in it and some mayonnaise, or and just holds everything together. And you put that with some Maryland jumbo lump, and that is the absolute best crab cake you will ever eat. I will put that crab cake with almost zero work, because you're just basically eating crab meat. Very little, obviously, almost no filler, nothing else to go with it. A little Worcestershire sauce and, some mayonnaise, and that's about it. And put some J.O. number 1 on it. And the same thing with soft crabs. You take a soft crab and you take my grandmother's 80-year-old cast iron skillet. You put a pat of butter in there. You put that freshly shed soft crab that just fell out of the shell. You drop it right in the frying pan. That is the best soft crab you will ever eat. So we're simple, I guess. We're simple people, but man, we eat good.
Man, that soft crab sounds delicious right here around lunchtime. Damn.
It's amazing. They're the best ever soft crabs. We had Sonny out from Best Ever Food Review Show, and he said that was the best seafood on the entire East Coast with my soft crab. So it's done.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
That's a heck of a compliment.
That was huge. He's eating food and seafood all over the world for him to appreciate. And if you watch the video, and I was sitting right across from him when he took a bite of that, his eyes just it was like this, like the fireworks went off. It was an otherworldly experience for him. It was really cool to see. So, it's just, I don't have much to do with, that, but just like I said, the Chesapeake Bay is such a special place, and we just produce the absolute best crabs on earth for sure.
Well, and that's why you're so proud of, and that's why you want to be taken care of. You know what I mean? Like that's the industry you've dedicated your life to. Like everyone always hopes that they leave the industry that they spent their time in better than they found it. You know what I mean? And there's only so much of that you can control, and guys like Luke can control. But you're gonna die trying to make sure you do the best thing you can for the fishery and for the future.
Yeah, and to keep it going. And like I said, with social media, I think it's really educating the public. It's the only way it's going to continue, because they're the ones with the voice that are going to allow us to continue to harvest, crab, blue balls in Maryland.
Yeah. I love it. We do this with all the guests, and that's actually how we ended up with you, CJ. But we've had you on, we've had Luke on around there. Oh, also, we got recommended Luke by Street Bike Tommy. Okay. You guys are Maryland boys. You ever hung out with Street Bike?
I think the only time I met him, he helped Luke one day. And so we work around each other. So he was on the boat the one day, I think is the only time that I ever got to talk to him. Can't remember. I don't get out much. I got 3 little kids, so I'm not out at the tailgate, Jimmy Seafood tailgate, and all these other young people, single people.
I'm doing fisherman and dad shit.
Yeah, so I don't make it out to those, but yeah, I know who he is, and certainly follow each other. I'm sure he knows who I am. But
he's a great guy. If you ever get a chance to hang with him, he's definitely worth it. You'll find yourself laughing your ass off. Really, really solid dude.
Funny guy.
But anybody you recommend that we bring on the Old Boy podcast from your circle of folks? They think would enjoy the time?
Yeah, I wish I'd have thought of this ahead of time. I guess I would probably recommend, like Jacob Knowles. He's one. I know he's a busy guy. He's a lobsterman up in Maine. He's a big social media guy, and just a huge advocate for their fishery up there, and becoming the face of Maine lobsters. I don't know him that well. Him and I talk a little bit on social media. Luke knows him much better than I do, but a great resource.
One more question before I wrap you up. When you're fishing the season, how many do you have on your crew?
Yeah, so I take 3 guys with me. I got one guy that shakes the pots out, shakes the crabs out, and then dumps the bait, shakes the crabs out, closes it back up, drops it in the hot water. And then another guy takes it out of the hot water, baits it, and stacks it. And then the third guy is the one sorting crabs. So we try to keep all the crabs sorted as quickly as possible, so they're not getting beat up and pinched up. Again, best quality product you can have, and it allows us to fish 500 pots in about 6 hours or so, something like that. So we can burn through the gear pretty quick and make sure we get all our pots done. If we need to move some, we can do that. I got the help to be able to move pots or change areas, things like that. And then that also allows, because we fish 25 pots on a line and bring them into the boat, we're able to set them back efficiently too and safely. So that's kind of how we do things.
No, that totally makes sense. And, CJ, I really appreciate the time today. Like your passion for what you do and your knowledge of it just shines through. And it's been a great conversation. On the way out, is there anybody you want to thank or mention? Tell folks where they can follow you, check you out at?
Yeah, definitely. I always give a shout out to my wife. She's my rock. She's just a huge, gets me through the season, and blessing to me, and, help. She's a soft crab queen. So,
I love it.
And certainly my kids, but all my social media is at Miss Paula. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. I have a YouTube channel too, and probably post less long form videos this year. Just I'm not going to have the time to be able to put into making the long form, but hope to certainly keep the short form going. So check us out over at Miss Paula. Leave us a comment if you checked us out from the Old Boy podcast.
Yeah, y'all do that. That way we can get CJ back on with us. But man, hey, I really appreciate the time, and keep doing what you're doing. Keep fighting the good fight, CJ, and wish you all the best, because what we got a little bit more season left, right? Yeah, we're just getting into it.
I haven't even actually started yet. I've been dragging my feet again to Salinity, so I haven't even started yet. So I got. It was nice to be able to work this out to get on with you guys, and so we'll get started another week or so, and be grinding till about Thanksgiving time. So,
well, man, we wish you the best fishing. all the best, and hope you all have a great season for you and the family and your crew. And once again, CJ, thank you for the time. And speaking of time, thank you guys for yours. I hope you enjoyed this one as much as I did. Until next time, we'll talk to you later. Thank you so much for listening to the Old Boy Podcast. Please subscribe, like, set your notifications, whatever you got to do to make sure you're getting the latest episodes. Also, feel free to go back, whether it be YouTube, Spotify, Apple. Get some of the past episodes, check those out, and always feel free to check out our socials, Old Boy Podcast. Thank you so much.